There is one brawler I think we need to stop picking in ranked. Edgar. And I know that sounds stupid because Edgar's insanely popular, but I found something that genuinely confused me. Yesterday, Edgar was sitting at around a 41% win rate across more than 186,000 recorded battles. Then I checked another dataset tracking high-level 3v3 players. Edgar was the 4th most picked brawler. His win rate, 38%. Bro, we're picking this man like he's paying our rent and he's losing more than half his games. But it gets weirder, because pro player Drage recently made an entire ranked video literally called Pro Playing Edgar equals broken in ranked. And watching a good Edgar, you can understand why he gets on the right brawler and suddenly somebody's entire health bar has filed for unemployment. So how can Edgar look completely broken in a pro player's hands while thousands of other Edgar games are getting absolutely fried? I think I found the answer, and unfortunately it's probably us, because Edgar has one massive problem in ranked that doesn't really show up when you just look at his abilities. He is horrible to reveal at the wrong time. One current ranked tracker actually gives Edgar a blind pick safety score of just 4 out of 10. And that makes so much sense when you think about what his super actually forces him to do. Edgar doesn't shoot you from across the map. His entire business model is basically throwing his own body at you. So the second I pick Edgar early, the other team already knows my plan. I'm coming over there, please prepare accordingly. And they can. Bull is one of the current counters listed against Edgar, which is hilarious, because imagine Edgar jumping directly onto a shotgun brawler who actually wants you standing 2 inches away from him. That's not an assassination, that's a donation. Rosa is another problem, Jackie too, and this is what I didn't really think about before. Edgar's super solves his range problem by putting him directly beside the enemy. But against certain brawlers, being directly beside them is literally the worst possible place he could be. His solution becomes the problem. That's so stupid, and controllers can make it even uglier, because Edgar's first few seconds after landing are everything. If you interrupt that opening, create distance, or survive long enough for somebody else to help, his entire dive can collapse. Now, here's where I found something even crazier. Supercell basically admitted this problem themselves. When they reworked Edgar this year, they gave Hardcore an upgraded effect that makes him immune to crowd control. For 1 second. So apparently, even Supercell looked at Edgar getting thrown around after landing and said, "Alright bro, we'll give you 1 second. Good luck." And Hardcore itself can absorb the next 3,700 damage before the shield fades. That's not a tiny shield, but it also tells you what Edgar needs to survive. He has to physically enter the dangerous part of the map and somehow stay alive long enough for his healing to matter. And his other gadget, Let's Fly, got completely reworked. Edgar can throw his scarves, latch onto a brawler or a wall, then jump behind the brawler or over the wall. When I first saw that, I thought, okay, that's disgusting. He doesn't even have to wait for the normal super anymore, and apparently Supercell thought the same thing because they nerfed it. The cooldown went from 14 seconds to 18. Fisticuff's takedown healing got reduced from 30% of Edgar's max health to 20%. And his hypercharge rate went from 40 to 33. But the reason Supercell gave is the interesting part. They said the updated Edgar could completely roll over squishy team compositions and leave the fight surprisingly healthy. That sentence basically explains Edgar in ranked. Squishy team composition, that's the food. Edgar isn't necessarily bad. He's incredibly dependent on whether the enemy has accidentally ordered from the Edgar menu. Jean, Barley, Poco, certain supports and throwers, brawlers that really don't want an assassin suddenly appearing inside their personal space. Current matchup data actually has Edgar favored into several of those kinds of brawlers. So if the enemy has already shown me 2 vulnerable targets and I'm picking late, okay, now Edgar starts making sense. But if I'm first picking him because I bought a cool Edgar skin and I'm emotionally attached, I'm basically giving the other team the rest of the draft to ruin my afternoon. And this is where Drake's video suddenly makes way more sense to me. A pro making Edgar look broken doesn't prove Edgar is a safe pick. It proves that when somebody understands when Edgar has an opening, the brawler can be disgusting. Meanwhile, I'm over here seeing Edgar available and thinking, yeah, Scarf Guy looks good, we're not playing the same game. And there's another stat that had me in tears. One current ranked focus dataset has Edgar around a 48% win rate and ranks him only around number 54 overall. But his popularity is enormous. Another broader dataset has more than 1.5 million recorded Edgar games. So this isn't some niche brawler being dragged down because 6 people don't know how to use him. Everybody and their grandmother is playing Edgar. Supercell even joked in an older balance update that Edgar is loved by loads of players but can take his own team down when played incorrectly. Imagine getting roasted by the people who made your brawler. That's nasty. But I think they're right. Because Edgar has another weird problem. When he works, he feels way better than when he fails. You remember the good Edgar games? You jump on somebody, 2 punches, healing, another target, super, jump again. Now you're running through their team like somebody stole your lunch money. That game gets permanently stored in your brain. You queue again thinking, yeah, I'm actually disgusting with Edgar. Then you get a completely different enemy draft. You spend 30 seconds hiding behind a wall, finally jump, immediately get folded, and somehow that game doesn't count. Bad randoms, lag, map was trash, Mercury was in retrograde, anything except Edgar was a terrible pick. And I do this too. I'm not sitting here pretending I can draft like a pro. Half the time I'm happy if I remember what map we're playing before the match starts, but that's actually why this matters. You don't need to become some draft professor, you can ask one stupidly simple question. If I jump on that brawler, what happens next? Seriously, that's it. If I jump on Bull, what happens next? Probably violent. Directed at me? Maybe don't. If I jump onto a vulnerable thrower who has no good escape and his teammate is nowhere near him? Now we're talking. If I land and immediately get knocked away, stunned or bursted before my healing can actually save me? Maybe this isn't an Edgar game. And there's another thing I didn't know. Current ranked guidance specifically recommends Edgar as a late pick, not a blind pick. That distinction is massive because late in the draft, you're not guessing anymore. You've seen the evidence. Maybe they've already picked their damage dealer. Maybe the obvious Edgar counter never appeared. Maybe 2 brawlers are vulnerable to dives. Now, you lock Edgar and suddenly they have the problem. That's the Edgar I would actually be scared of. Not first pick Edgar. First pick Edgar is basically sending me an email about what you're planning to do. Thank you for the notice. The scary Edgar is the last pick you forgot about. Your team has already drafted, you're feeling good, then somebody hovers Edgar, and you look back at your composition. No proper answer. 2 juicy targets, nobody really wants him landing on them. Oh, we're cooked. And here's something else I think explains why Edgar gets worse for some players as ranked gets harder. Bad opponents can teach you terrible habits. At lower levels, someone sees Edgar and still picks something Edgar absolutely loves jumping on. People waste their knockback, they stand alone, they don't save escape abilities, Edgar farms them. And you learn the wrong lesson. You think Edgar works everywhere, then you climb. Now someone sees the Edgar pick and actually reacts. They save the ability that ruins your jump. They stay close enough to trade you. They draft something tankier. They make you wait. And suddenly your Edgar mechanics didn't get worse. Your opponents just stopped volunteering to die. That difference is huge, and it also explains something I noticed in the data. Edgar's numbers can look completely different depending on what player group you're measuring. In one large current sample, he sits around 41%. In another ranked focused sample, he's closer to 48%. And among a dataset of top global 3v3 players, he's down around 38% despite being one of their most picked brawlers. I wouldn't treat any one of those numbers as some magical absolute truth. Different datasets measure different players and situations, but when multiple current datasets keep showing enormous Edgar popularity without an equally ridiculous win rate, that tells me something useful. We're probably forcing him into games where he doesn't belong, and that's why I wouldn't even automatically ban Edgar. This sounds backwards, but hear me out. If my team already has good answers to him, why would I ban him? If the other guy desperately wants to force Edgar into Bull, Jackie, or another composition that makes his life miserable, be my guest. I'm not stopping you, I'm basically holding the door open. Because the brawler I'm scared of isn't necessarily the famous assassin on the screen. It's whatever brawler actually fits the draft. And I think that's the part of ranked I've been missing. The strongest brawler isn't always the strongest pick. Those are 2 completely different things. Edgar can be strong, Edgar can have powerful upgraded abilities, Edgar can absolutely destroy squishy teams. A pro can make Edgar look completely unfair, and Edgar can still be a horrible pick in the match you're currently playing. All of those things can be true at the same time. That's way more interesting to me than somebody just saying Edgar is B tier, don't use him. Because now I actually know what I'm looking for. I don't need to stop playing Edgar. I need to stop deciding I'm playing Edgar before the enemy gives me a reason. If they show me vulnerable brawlers, okay. If the counters are gone, interesting. If I'm late in the draft and they can't comfortably stop the jump, now we're cooking. But if I first pick Edgar and then spend the next 3 minutes wondering why every brawler on the enemy team seems specifically designed to annoy me, bro, they were. I literally gave them the opportunity to do it. So yes, I think Edgar is the brawler a lot of us should stop picking in ranked. Not because he's trash, the numbers and even Supercell's own nerfs show he can be disgusting in the right situation. Stop picking him because you wanted Edgar before the draft even started. Make the enemy earn your Edgar pick. Let them show you the targets. Let them show you they don't have the answers. then bring him out. Because after looking at all of this, I think the difference between the Edgar who gets absolutely fried and the Edgar who destroys an entire team sometimes happens before the match even starts. And I'm definitely going to pretend I knew that the next time I completely ruin a draft.